Hey-ho, creepy friends and weirdos, and welcome to episode 19 of Strange Vibes Horror and Weird Fiction Podcast. I'm your sinister host, Sylvia. Tonight, we present part 5 of All the World's a Grave, and the truly creepy story, Imago, written by K.L. Hutchinson. Links and author bios are in the description.
All the World's a Grave, written and narrated by Terence, Part 5. We can search some of the other laboratories to find human material. I need an intact brain and a good DNA sample. I should be able to resurrect some other people. I'll see if we can get a vehicle working, then we should drive, it'll be quicker. Where was the lab you found me in? That would be a good place to start. I can't have been the only intact specimen that gave you enough to work with, the man said. The men spent some moments searching for a car that looked like it might be a possibility. There were countless vehicles in various states of rust, but he found an electric car parked undercover, charged by solar panels fitted to the roof of the building. The keys were nearby, in amongst a pile of rags that had once been a person. There were shoes, keys, a belt buckle, a handbag and a cracked phone. From what was left of the shoes and the handbag, the driver might have been a woman. The man was struck an almost physical blow by the sudden realization of how lonely he felt. The car creaked and groaned, the brakes had seized, but eventually they were moving. The visitor sitting in the back seat at the man's request, it was hard to see his face, constantly blurring and twisting. The lab was ahead, the car park almost empty. The epicentre of the nano-apocalypse had been half a world away, so people had had time to be truly terrified before the end. They knew what was coming, how impossible it was to escape, and how painful a death it was going to be. He wondered how many had taken their own lives rather than face that. It would have made no difference. The nanos would have absorbed them dead or alive. One news report had said that even an atomic bomb had been used. It had slowed them down, of course. It had destroyed the nanos nearby. The electromagnetic pulse destroyed more. But the survivors just absorbed more people and rebuilt. Nothing could stop the inevitable. The front door glass of the laboratory had been shattered. One of the doors was twisted on its frame. "I assume you did this to get in?" the man asked the visitor. "No, I didn't need to. It was like this already. I assumed people panicked. Maybe they thought salvation lay inside." The man picked his way through the ruins of the door and looked around. He had to make his way through 2 sets of heavy doors to get in. The building still had power from solar panels and a wind turbine, so at least some of the cryogenic containers were still working. A few had been broken open. Why the hell anyone would do that made no sense to the man, but people did strange things when they panicked. Some were just smashed, but some appeared intact, the displays still blinking. "Where was mine?" the man asked. He had a weird goosebumps feeling running up his back. "That one," the visitor responded, raising one hand and pointing to an open and deactivated container. "Oh," was the man's only response. The man moved from one container to another, checking the indicator lights. Some were red, many were amber, but a few had stable green indicators. There was a small label with the name listed. Despite what he'd said to the visitor about this not being about finding him a woman, he was pleased to note that several of the labels had women's names. "How long will the resurrection process take? Should I reprogram the nanites before you resurrect anyone else?" the man asked. However, he couldn't have said why, but he was really starting to distrust the alien visitor's motives. "I am not sure. I could begin the process of rebuilding your species and of other animals. There are multiple DNA samples, especially of animals, available. Is that what you want?" Will you rebuild your world? May I still visit? Why do you need my permission to visit? If you've rescued us, I would imagine most people would be pleased to see you. If you have the ability to do something but refuse, then I don't understand. The man found himself once again getting angry and frustrated with this whole situation, the loneliness, the horror of what he'd seen, the inscrutable alien. Again, the visitor appeared to glow more brightly when bathed in the man's anger. He appeared to be strengthened by the burst of intense emotion, and the man realized with horror what it was that the visitor ate. It feasted on human fear and anger. The man stepped back and tried to control his temper. He asked the visitor, "Can you resurrect more people and animals?" The visitor nodded his confirmation. "If you begin the resurrection process, I'll reprogram the nanites." "But how? Where do I have to go?" the man asked. "I have gained access to the nanite system, or rather my ship's computer has. It can create a connection between the computers in the library and the nanos. But you'll have to interpret how to do so, what instructions to give. I assume you'll order them to be permanently shut down. I guess that would be the safest." Again, the man felt that there was more to the visitor's question. The man just nodded and continued to check which containers still held viable samples. He avoided looking back at the alien visitor and focused on his task. He had the vague feeling that he might not have much more time.
Tune in next week for the thrilling conclusion. And now for our feature. Imago by K.L. Hutchinson. Jimmy was too kind, the way many children are. He looked about the right age, the right build. Best of all, his parents were nowhere in sight. He looked genuinely concerned for me when we met on the forest trail of the nature preserve. I held a leash hooked to a broken collar and asked if he'd seen a yellow dog with droopy ears. He said no. I asked if he'd help me find him. He said yes. I know what you're thinking. This is the account of a child abuser. But that's completely wrong. I am a businessman who sells all manner of rare or forbidden products. Drugs, weapons, exotic animals, and anything else you could think of, and a whole hell of a lot you couldn't. A simple merchant who happens to know some people with questionable proclivities, or lonely souls who crave the affection of children they fail to conceive themselves. And where there is a market, I am there to fill it. Children are a particularly rare commodity, and I was confident the boy would sell for a good deal, possibly a great deal if any auctions were approaching. In spite of the dollar signs in my eyes, I was careful. I'd worn a broad hat and parked in the mostly forgotten lot behind the nature preserve. I'd used a rental but very common model car that I'd changed the plates on nearly 100 miles away. 12 hours and 2 vehicles later, Jimmy was safely stowed away in one of the well-furnished rooms of my basement, eyes teary from either his new surroundings or how bright the lights must have been after being blindfolded for so long. I handed him a set of pajamas that looked about the right size, then pointed him toward the bathroom at the back of the room, and told him towels and washcloths were in the drawers by the tub. I returned in a few minutes with a PB&J sandwich, some ham and cheese on crackers, sliced apples, and a couple of juice boxes. He was sitting on the couch in the pajamas by then, still rubbing his eyes and smelling faintly of piss. My car stopped working when I tried to start it again just now, but one of my friends is going to come soon to drive you to see your mom, okay? He nodded and ate one of his apple slices. It was a gamble saying his mom, since some children had no mothers and or lived with their fathers or grandparents, but it was the safest guess if one had to be made. And making a personal connection, however slight, seemed necessary to keep the boy eating and sleeping. "Do you want to watch cartoons or play video games?" He shook his head. I turned on the TV anyway and put on Tom and Jerry. "How long till I can leave?" he asked, suddenly sounding much older and skeptical. Something in his gaze sent a tumble through my gut, awakening some unconscious apprehension. Of what, I couldn't say. Soon, I said with a smile, then set down the remote, stepped out of the room, and hurried up the stairs. It wasn't even sunrise when I'd arrived home with Jimmy, so I took a nap. A little past 9, I sat down with a cup of coffee and made some calls to past clients, with little success. At first, I wondered if a few of them had changed to different burner phones, but when I made it 10 numbers down my list without a single person answering, I began to suspect something was amiss. When I reached the 16th number, someone finally picked up. "Carl," I said cheerfully, "it's Ethan," which wasn't my real name, just the one that this particular set of clientele knew me by. "I may have something to sell you." "I'm not buying." "I haven't even told you a price." "I know it already," he said. "Prison." "What's going on, Carl? You're the first person to answer my calls. Whatever you think I did, I didn't. Throw me a bone. Just tell me why no one's answering my calls." There was a long pause. I might have wondered if he'd hung up, if not for the low drone of a fan somewhere on his end. "Google Lupton," he said, then hung up. A quick internet search yielded an abundance of news articles, all with headlines to the effect of 23 women and children rescued, a dozen arrests made in human trafficking raid in Lupton, Ohio. Well, shit. I skipped to the less business-minded contacts. There were a few couples who had previously adopted through my services. The boy might be a little old for such clients, but, well, you know the saying about desperate times. 3 of them nervously said I had the wrong number and not to call again. Another 4 said they weren't looking to expand their family, or that 7 was older than they were looking for. That left the more disreputable contacts. I sighed and dialed the first number. It rang twice. "Hello?" He sounded half asleep. "Frank," I said warmly, "it's Thomas. I might have a puppy for you after all." "I was beginning to think you'd forgotten about me," he said with a chuckle, sounding suddenly more alert. "Never," I said. "The wait list is just so long, you understand. We have 1 pup left, white with brown patches, 7 weeks old." "How much?" 20. "I'd need 2 months to get that much." "Horse shit." "I'm serious. I can't just poof 20 grand into my pocket," Frank said. "I might be able to do 12, but that's as high as I can go right now. As it is, me and the pup will be eating bologna sandwiches for the next month." I frowned. I never liked being reminded of the fact that children had lives once they left. I didn't wish their deaths, of course, just that they sort of went on living in a way that felt, in practice, no different than having ever existed at all. "Can you pick him up tomorrow?" I asked. "I can get the funds by Friday." "Friday?" Like I said, I'm a little strapped for cash. "Friday's a long ways away, Frank. I'd never keep them for that long." "Well, that's the best my bank account and schedule can provide. You can sell to someone else, of course, but I'm assuming I'm not the first person you've contacted. You could probably find another buyer in 10 minutes, but I'm guessing that you're looking to prioritize a lack of risk over expediency." Then the bastard hung up. I stared at the phone a long moment, unable to shake the strange feeling that had wormed its way into my stomach earlier. I still couldn't explain it. Was it maybe the look in the boy's eyes? Like he knew something I didn't? A groundless suspicion struck me, and I grabbed a bug detector and ventured back downstairs. I scanned the boy, then the clothes he'd left on the bathroom floor, waiting pointlessly for the buzz that would indicate any UHF or VHF transmissions. I shook out his clothing for good measure and inspected his shoes. Sufficiently convinced that no one was listening in or tracking the boy, I finally took a good look at him. "Are you all right, Jimmy?" He shrugged. He'd taken only a few bites of his PBJ and only nibbled at one of the crackers. He looked almost pale, though that could have been the lighting of the basement. But that wouldn't explain his eyes being as glassy as the inebriated, and the look on his face indicating his mind was off somewhere between Jupiter and the Andromeda Galaxy. I felt his forehead. It was cool. "Do you have diabetes, Jimmy?" I asked, already pulling a glucose meter out of a drawer. He didn't reply. "This might pinch a little," I said before pricking his finger. I expected him to cry or gasp or get angry, but he didn't react at all. The knot in my stomach grew larger, but the meter indicated he was well within normal range. I'd used Nutella instead of peanut butter in his sandwich, which in theory shouldn't overexcite a peanut allergy. And besides, he was breathing fine and didn't look to have any swelling. The worst possibilities were ruled out, and he didn't have so much as a fever. There was no reason to think anything was wrong with him aside from nerves. It was the most rational conclusion, but I couldn't be convinced that he wasn't terribly sick, and I'd soon have a dead child on my hands. Just like I couldn't do away with my suspicion he was part of a big sting operation despite the lack of devices on his person, the fact no one had kicked my door in, or that it was both patently absurd and highly illegal to let a child be kidnapped as part of a policing operation. Something had simply felt off since the moment I'd gotten him into my home. My worries got the better of me, and before I knew it, I was calling one of my medically inclined associates. "I need some tests done," I said. I held the phone against my ear with my shoulder as I uncorked a bottle of red wine. Damn, I needed a drink. Immediately. For yourself or someone else? Someone else, a child. Off the books, of course. My acquaintance grew quiet. Just run it through your damn machines. Check, I don't know, the 10 or 20 most common tests, and send the results to Mike. Norman, look, I don't want to be part of something involving kids. 1,000, cash. No one will ask any questions. And if they do, it's not like you know anything. I'll have Mike put in the orders. You'll just be doing your job at that point. His way of saying yes was by telling me what color the tops of the tubes I should use were, reminding me how to store blood properly, and how quickly it all needed to be delivered. He told me the time to deliver it, and promptly hung up. By the time I'd gotten off the phone with Mike, I was out 3 of my $12,000 fee. This whole affair was proving to be far more trouble than it was worth. The expense on Mike was one thing, but 1,000 on a phlebotomist who doesn't know anything that could put me away? I shook my head and downed my glass of wine. I took the necessary tools to take the boy's blood, including Paw Patrol and Spider-Man Band-Aids, and a small assortment of candy in the hopes of preventing tears, should he actually react like a child this time. But the extras proved unneeded. He was as withdrawn this time as the last, not even voicing an opinion on which Band-Aid and candy he'd like when asked. I settled on Spider-Man and a sour green apple sucker. I slipped the candy into his hand, and something stuck to my thumb as I pulled away. It looked like a spider web, and I rushed to brush it on my slacks. I flinched when Jimmy spoke. "I want to go home." I offered him a sympathetic smile. "My friend will be coming to take you soon." His green eyes blinked to mine. "You and I both know that's not the same thing." Without saying anything, I deposited the rest of the candy on the sofa and retreated upstairs. I delivered what I knew to be pointless blood samples to the phlebotomist and returned home. I poured myself a second glass of wine and put the bottle away. There'd be time for proper drinking once the child was gone. Besides, I had to see if I could make some other sales that afternoon to make up for the small disaster the matter with the boy was proving to be. 4 hours and 3 cups of coffee later, I'd managed to find homes for 2 rugs, 3 paintings, 2 being magnificent forgeries, 5 fox kits, and a Bengal tiger. I was little more than a middleman in a few of the sales, and even where I was the primary broker, there were other parties to be paid. Even so, by dinner time, I'd more than made up for my losses. I was positively proud of myself, and felt I'd more than earned the right to retire to my study for the evening, when a voice, more of pragmatism than conscious, mumbled in the back of my mind, reminding me to check on the boy. Right. Of course, it was both a necessary and simple enough task. Yet I found myself stalling for some unnameable reason, flipping through a leather-bound book of notes on the occult, written by a crackpot named Professor Flinch, though a crackpot whose original works sell for thousands among the equally insane. I sighed and closed the book, grabbed a banana and a bag of chips from the kitchen, and headed downstairs. The boy was sitting on the couch, his arms covered in a layer of something white. "What the hell?" I remembered my audience and added a playful chuckle. "What on earth did you manage to get into?" I went to brush the stuff off him, but recoiled the moment I touched it. It was spiderweb, lots of it. I wiped it off his arms with a towel, failing to think of anywhere in the basement he could have wandered that might have accumulated so many cobwebs. The boy said nothing, only stared blankly at the cartoons playing on the television. I left the food sitting on the cushion beside him, along with a couple bottled waters and a blanket, and then stepped back into the hall. I locked the door behind me then, rubbing my arms, rushed upstairs and to bed. I awoke to ringing and groggily attempted to answer one cell phone before realizing the sound was coming from a different one. I lumbered out of bed and fished the phone from the pocket of my pants thrown on top of my dresser. "Hello?" I said. "Is this some kind of a joke to you, Norman?" I had recognized the number before picking up, but only so far as it was familiar, and my mind struggled now to place the voice. I hadn't managed to fall asleep until after 3 a.m., and my faculties were suffering for it. Belatedly, my mind offered the answer. "Mike, the damned doctor." "I'm not sure what you mean," I said. "I don't know if you're pulling some kind of joke or if you somehow contaminated your samples with God knows what, but I'm not going to put up with this shit. If the patient is in need of medical assistance, call me for advice. Otherwise, leave me out of it." Then he hung up. Positively joyful in the mornings, that one. Best $2,000 I'd ever spent. I mulled over what he might have meant, or what I might have managed to mess up as I pissed, and while brushing my teeth when I poured my coffee as I carried a pack of Pop-Tarts, an apple, and a cup of milk downstairs. But I wasn't pondering a thing when I spilled it all, plastic cup bouncing across the carpet, upon finding the boy strewn across the couch, half covered in webs. I swore incoherently as I ripped the strands away. My heart nearly leapt from my throat as I checked the boy's pulse, which was normal, as was his breathing. He seemed perfectly fine, perhaps a little annoyed that I'd woken him. "Can I have another cup of milk?" he asked, pointing to the one still on the floor. I stood there, speechless, as he hopped down from the couch to collect the apple and Pop-Tarts. It was then I spotted the now empty bag of chips in the waste bin, alongside a banana peel and the wrappers from the rather large pile of candy I'd left on the sofa the day prior. He'd clearly regained his appetite at some point. "Of course," I said, then held up the webbing I'd collected when freeing him. "Do you know what this is about?" He shrugged and turned his attention to cartoons as he took a bite of his apple. "Mike," I said with relief when he finally answered my call. "Look, before you say anything, I wasn't messing with you or trying to waste your time. Maybe I messed something up. I don't know. It's not important, but my guest is having some sort of skin reaction. I don't know why." "So like a rash?" Mike replied. "Hell, just changing soap could do that." "Not a rash. Worse," I said, stopping myself short of saying growing webs on his skin. I wasn't even sure I believed it. Much worse. "Hives? Boils?" he said. Then when I didn't answer, "Open sores?" "Not exactly," I said, "but it's bad. I'd feel much better if you took a look at him." Mike sighed, then was quiet for a long moment. "Look," he said, "you told me this involves a kid. I don't like that. I can give you basic tests and prescriptions, but I'm wary of in-person consultations, especially in this case. I'm not going to risk my conscience, let alone my career on this. He could end up remembering my face, and I'll sure as hell remember him, so count me out." "But he needs a doctor." "Then drop him off at an emergency room a couple of hours away," Mike said. "That's my advice, and if you take it, I'll allow you a couple of months to pay my fee for the lab work. Only fair." Then he hung up on me, just like everyone else even tangentially connected to this sale for the last 30 hours. When exactly had everyone gotten the upper hand on me in negotiations? I brought the boy a fresh cup of milk, along with another banana and Nutella and jelly sandwich, since he could apparently eat his weight in food. He'd finished the Pop-Tarts by then, and was kicking his feet absently against the couch, as he watched Teen Titans Go. The boy certainly looked healthy enough, perfectly fine, aside from the occasional coating of web. Whatever was ailing the kid was entirely external. He was healthy. Weird, but healthy. Maybe this could still work. As long as he looked normal when Frank arrived to pick him up, I could still make enough of a profit to make this whole headache worth it. The boy glanced at me, then back to the TV, maybe wondering if I had something else to say, or any more food to offer. But my imagination got the better of me. In the brief moment his eyes met mine, his expression was, I couldn't say, but not that of the clueless, caring boy I'd met in the nature preserve, or so I'd imagined. Perhaps remembering the serious expression he'd worn the previous evening when scared and tired and clearly still feeling carsick. Now he was a cheerfully oblivious child again, sipping his milk with a straw and taking 2 large bites from his sandwich. The Webbs were back by the afternoon, and again by evening, each time a little more than the last. Clearly, the boy would need almost constant care. The week I had planned was in shambles. By the 3rd day, I began to doubt my sanity, due if nothing else to the loss of sleep. I had to return to the basement every few hours, worried that to not do so would result in the boy being suffocated by the Webbs. I found it took longer for them to return after the boy bathed, so twice a day I had him put on a pair of swim trunks, and I scrubbed him with the bath brush and sprayed away the soap and webbing with the shower head. Even with this discovery, I found my sleep fitful at best, full of dreams of the boy dying in a mountain of webs, or Frank finding the boy loosely covered in the stuff and refusing the sale. The boy ate like a kid twice his age. Sometimes, in the moments when his belly was full and his tiredness setting in, he would ask about going home, and something would wiggle in my gut, not from the question, but the way he asked it, like he knew. But then the moment passed. The more tired I grew, the more Jimmy seemed to grow restless. Any child would wilt without going outside to run for days at a time, I suppose. And despite his relative satisfaction with the cartoons and snacks, the edges to his smiles seemed to grow complicated as the hours dragged on. It even reached his eyes, which seemed to have grown darker from when we had met. But I knew that was sleep deprivation speaking, and what set of eyes wouldn't look brighter in the light of the sun than the sterile white of an artificial light? Then Friday came at last, and the boy had showered less than half an hour before Frank arrived. This would work. I'd have the money, and Frank would likely be states away before he noticed anything, and by then my front gate would be locked, all inventory on site moved to storage, and I'd be on a plane to my vacation home. A modest 2-bedroom on the beach, but a joyous castle after this week. "What's his name?" Frank asked, possibly for the 2nd time. He was holding a plastic bag in each hand when I met him at the front door, full of candy and toys by the look of it. "Jimmy," I said too slowly, the fatigue getting the better of my mind. "You look awful, Tom. Tell me you didn't give the kid the flu." "I ate some bad fish last night. Don't worry, he had chicken nuggets." Frank nodded, but hardly seemed invested. He was too busy staring at the hall leading to the basement. "So can I meet him?" He sounded as giddy as a kid about to meet their new puppy. Jimmy was the 4th boy I'd sold Frank, although the first in 7 years. Something like a conscience twinged momentarily within me. Then I squashed it. 12 grand could squash a lot of things. "Of course," I said, leading him across the hall, through the first locked door, down the stairs, and through the second locked door. The boy wasn't on the couch, and the bathroom light was off. I scanned the room, and my stomach turned to ice. Hanging in one corner of the ceiling was a large cocoon. "Shit!" I snatched up the broom. "What are you doing?" Frank said. "Where's Jimmy?" I pointed at the top of the wall. "In there." "You're joking," he said, laughing at the suggestion, stopping only when I didn't join him. "Well, shit, let's get him out." I scrambled on top of the couch, nearly losing my balance on the narrow back. Frank set a hand against my back to steady me. I shoved the broom handle into the cocoon, but it bounced back as if I'd poked some sort of sponge or foam. I swore and tried to ignore the shiver down my back, then thrust the broom handle again, harder this time. The cocoon ripped a little, and I withdrew the wooden handle, pulling back a layer of the silk as I did. The boy's arm slid out of the opening, but I recognized it only by its dimensions. The color and appearance was all wrong, and the boy's hand had been replaced with a scaly bundle of claws. Goosebumps shot down my legs and arms, and my breath caught at the chirping, buzzing noises from inside the cocoon. Frank stumbled back, nearly knocking me down, and he swore profusely. I needed to leave. Damn the money. Damn Frank. To hell with the boy and even the house. I had a couple of others. Why hadn't it occurred to me earlier that I could just walk away from the whole thing? I jumped down from the couch. The cocoon burst. Join me Sundays at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for more works of the mad, macabre, or just plain weird. Until then, my friends, stay strange.